Hello, everyone, and welcome to another perspective with your boy Tyrese Biv. And today I want to talk about college football. What a weekend of college football, and it started on Friday night, and that's where I want to begin. I want to talk about really just 5 things today on college football, and the first one is the Pac-12, and if the Pac-12 is in trouble now with its clearly best team, USC, at least going in to week 5, USC was the best team in the Pac-12, losing on the road to Washington State. So the question is, again, is the Pac-12 in trouble because of the brand? Washington State is not a national brand, and are people going to take them serious going forward? Going forward, will people take them serious? Now, USC is not out of the playoff picture by any stretch of the imagination. I do believe that a one-loss Pac-12 champion could get in over a one-loss Big 12 champion, depending on how the committee views them. So, with there just being 4 teams into getting into the college football playoff, every year, at least one conference will be left out. And it seems that in years past, it's the Big 12 that gets left out. But brands can definitely come into a play, because I don't think a one-loss Washington or one-loss Washington State brand will get in over a one-loss Oklahoma brand if both teams are conference champions. So it's going to be interesting moving forward, though. The Pac-12 is, again, a conference nobody really stepped out and played anyone of any significance in the non-conference. So it's going to be really your wins in conference are going to hold the most weight for the Pac-12. And when you don't play anybody non-conferencely, you're measuring against your own conference and how people perceive them to be. When Washington State, and Utah, they didn't play anybody non-conference. So how good are they really? We don't know until they start playing one another. And if they start playing and beating one another, the game was good, and the 3-point margin is signs of at least some sort of parity between the teams. But USC has to bounce back, and they have to bounce back in a big way. And they know that they can still take care of business and have an opportunity to get into the Pac-12 championship and get into the college football playoff. But whom else really is going to challenge them in their division? And, that's the biggest thing as far as USC is concerned. It's, well, we lost to a team, but no one in the Pac-12 South is really going to challenge them going forward. So it's like, whatever. They should beat everybody else in the Pac-12 South. Utah, Arizona State, Arizona, UCLA, Colorado. They should beat everybody there. So getting to the Pac-12 championship shouldn't be a problem. Now, the problem is if they play a Washington or a Washington State, will they win? That is going to be their biggest problem, is will they win against either of those teams in the Pac-12 championship. And again, if Washington or Washington State slips going forward, will they then look at USC if USC would happen to slip one more time? If USC slips one more time and Washington or Washington State somehow doesn't go undefeated and win the Pac-12, will the Pac-12 have a representative in the college football playoff? Even a 2-loss USC Pac-12 champion is going to have a hard time getting in over even a 1 or even maybe a 2-loss conference champion elsewhere, because the ACC is starting to form and shape as well. Another big thing that I took away from this weekend is Alabama's a little scary right now. One thing you never question about Alabama is defense. You always question their defense, but when they're putting up 66 points on teams, that's a bit scary. When Jalen Hurts is throwing the football with accuracy, that becomes a bit scary. Alabama's offense, if it starts rolling and it starts really starting to dominate teams, and not just on the ground, but they're able to move the ball and be a legitimate threat through the air, look out. Look out. This team is going to probably only get better as the season goes on and they start to really get more reps with one another and everything like that. So Alabama having an offense is a bit scary. However, other parts of the SEC I will address later, but Alabama, scary. Auburn looks pretty good. That was an impressive win that they had. Georgia continues to impress. It's amazing how that works out with Georgia, and that's going to really let me segue right into my next topic and next takeaway was Clemson and Miami looks like they're on a collision course for the ACC championship. Miami only had really 2 hiccups on their schedule. One was Virginia Tech, and the other was Florida State. Florida State still doesn't look like the Florida State team that we expected coming into the season. I know Francois going down has set them back, but you still expected them with the athletes and the recruitment job that Jimbo Fisher continues to do down there year after year, that they would be in a much better position than they're in, because there was a point where you thought that they were going to lose that game on yesterday to Wake Forest, but they were able to pull themselves together and walk away with a victory. But Clemson going into Blacksburg and handling Virginia Tech the way they handled them, and Miami handling business versus Duke, just sheds a light on where the U is under Mark Richt and where Dabo Swinney is continuing to take Clemson, and this just looks like a collision course between these two teams who right now on paper are probably the 2 best teams in the ACC. and they don't have the problem of being in the same division like the Big Ten is in a situation where their three best teams are probably in the same division. And I'm not sure if they're going to do any type of realignment to avoid this continuing to go on or what, but they need to consider it because Wisconsin is going to always be in the Big Ten championship at this rate, playing against whomever is healthy or whatnot between Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. But to stay in the ACC, Clemson is for real. And I know Alabama hasn't played anybody, and you don't want to say that because they haven't played anybody that they're on the number one team in the country. But man, Clemson just continues to impress. They just continue to impress, and they probably have the most impressive resume between the two teams that played in the national championship game a year ago between themselves and Alabama. It would probably be Clemson that has been the most impressive as far as opponents that they've played at this point. But Clemson just continues to impress. They continue to impress, and they look good. They look good. I was looking over something, and I was thinking to myself, maybe the Big 12 has it right. Just hear me out. Just hear me out. I think the Big 12 has it right. 10 teams in the conference. Each team plays all the other teams in the conference once. And at the end of the year, the two teams with the best record are going to play one another. And you're going to have film on the team that you've already played going into a conference championship game. No divisions. No, they haven't. You don't have to worry about situations like Miami, in the ACC. Miami, they're not playing Clemson in the regular season. They're not playing Louisville in the regular season. But Oklahoma's playing Oklahoma State. They're going to play West Virginia. They're going to play TCU. Like, they're going to play the other 3 or 4 best teams within the conference. They're going to play them. And you're going to be able to say, hey, I potentially beat that team that you regard high twice. You regard them highly. They're highly regarded. And I beat them not once, but twice. And could you imagine if Alabama beat Georgia twice this year? Or if Michigan beat Ohio State twice this year? Or if Washington State beat USC twice this year? Like, I just started to think about it. Maybe the Big 12 is onto something. Maybe they have an understanding of what it is that they want to do going forward. And maybe other teams can look, other conferences can look at the Big 12 and say, they got a championship game now, so you can't hold that against them anymore. And now you can have 2 wins over a quality opponent. Take, for instance, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State continues to win. Oklahoma continues to win. Oklahoma, at this point, is probably the 3rd best team in the country.